Well, hi everyone. Welcome. We'll be getting started in just a couple of minutes as we wait for more people to join now. And while we wait, maybe I can give you a quick overview of today's sessions. We'll be talking about how one of the leading fashion marketplace, Otrium, is using AI to solve product data challenges and how to scale operations efficiently. Our guest today brings deep expertise in building and leading digital product teams. He will share how his team is using AI to make their operation faster, smarter, and more scalable. This will be an interactive session, so if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat at any point, and we'll try to answer either directly or after we end the session. It looks like more people are joining now, so I think we can get started. So I will just say again, hello everyone, and welcome to another session of AI and e-commerce talks webinar. I'm Svetlana, the founder and CEO of Pixyle AI, and I'm happy to have you all with us today. If this is your first time joining, this webinar series focuses on how AI is transforming the way e-commerce businesses operate. We feature real stories from leaders who are using AI to solve practical challenges. We all know that in the fashion marketplace and retail space, managing data at scale is one of the toughest operational tasks. With thousands of products added every week, each needing consistent tagging, categorizations, and descriptions, many teams struggle to keep up, and manual processes slow things down. So, this is where AI can step in to help scale all those efforts. Today, we are joined by Otrium, a fashion outlet marketplace and a retailer that is rethinking how unsold inventory is managed and sold. We'll hear how they're using AI to improve product data workflows and support their growth. There will be a Q&A session at the end, but feel free to ask questions throughout as we are discussing. Just drop them in the chat and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. I will do also a quick personal introduction and then of the guest before we begin. I'm Svetlana, the founder and CEO of Pixyle AI. I have a background in artificial intelligence and completed my PhD in AI at the University of Amsterdam back in 2016, even when AI was not this popular. I started Pixyle in 2018 after seeing firsthand how difficult it is to find what you're looking for while shopping online. Poor filters and bad search because of incomplete product data are still a big e-commerce problems for brands, retailers, and marketplaces. And AI is here now to help solve them. Over the past 15 years, I've seen the amazing evolving of AI technology, and it's evolving so rapidly. The tools that we have today are powerful and accessible, and they're already having a big impact on how retail businesses run. Today, we'll talk about how Otrium is using these tools in a practical way to boost efficiency and improve how they manage product data. Now, I'd like to introduce our guest, Bradley King, Director of Product and Engineering at Otrium. So, Bradley, welcome. Can you tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and your role at Otrium?
Thanks, Svetlana. Yes, welcome everyone. So I'm Bradley King. I've had about 10 years experience at the intersection of product and operations throughout my career in numerous different industries and different roles, from business consultant to senior product manager, and then most recently director of product and technology at Otrium, where I've been part of an amazing journey for the past 5.5 years. Through multiple different milestones, from raising funds over 150 million to growing revenue 6x, so from 30 million annual revenue to 150 plus within 3 years. Global operations we've scaled to, and then also achieving our first profitable quarter at the back end of last year. All this while growing an amazing team and working with great cross-functional colleagues. That's a little bit of my background, and I'm sure we'll dive into more specific details throughout the call today. On the personal side, I definitely enjoy and live by the motto of work hard and play hard, for those that know me. So essentially, I like to try and achieve balance in everything I do. And I like to bring that to the workplace as well. So whether that's a balance between gut decision making versus data decision making, working hard, playing hard, enjoying milestones, learning from failures. I think there should be a balance in everything that we do, both professionally and personally. So that's a little bit about me.
Yes, great. It sounds amazing. Thanks, Bradley. And I remember seeing one photo of your New Year's party last year with you holding a champagne. So I think also the culture at Otrium, from what we've seen by working closely with the team, is amazing. And I think it fits your personality, as you say, work hard and play hard. So all this success that you mentioned about Otrium, there's a reason. There are great people behind. And so happy to have you with us here today. So maybe I can start with our first question. As you say, Otrium has established itself as a leading digital fashion outlet. Can you tell us more about Otrium and how your role in product and technology has helped shape its growth?
Yes, perfect. So for those who don't know Otrium, Otrium is an off-price fashion marketplace. So basically, we help, and our proposition is to help brands in the fashion space with their excess inventory, matching this on our platform with consumers. We've gone, so a little bit about Otrium, it's gone from startup to scale up. I joined over 5.5 years ago with a focus initially on EU. In the EU markets, we scaled to the UK and the US. And we've also grown the platform to 4 million members. And from about 80 brand partners, we now have over 300 brand partners, which is essentially stores on our platform. So that's a little bit about Otrium and how we fit in to the fashion outlet marketplace. And then a little bit about my role. So my role initially started at Otrium, really focusing on our supply side. I think like a lot of marketplaces, I'm sure those that have been in the same industry have heard the term that it's supply driven first. So get supply first, and then it creates the flywheel. Naturally, that's how I started at Otrium as well. So my role first initially was to scale our brand partners. So how do we scale our products, our operations, so that we can really accelerate the growth of our brands and our product catalog, so our supply that's on the platform. From there, and I'll start there with technology, we really focused on scaling operations. So firstly, how do we scale operations to service our brands, but also our customers at scale, and also the speed to market. So getting products on our platform as fast as possible was a key milestone and a key focus for the company at the start of my journey with Otrium. And on the consumer side, it was about really creating the best in class experience. So creating a premium experience, even though it's off price. And I think, especially at the time Otrium started, that was something that was not out there in the market. And that was really the focus of how do we leverage technology to create a really digital only platform for off price
Yeah.
fashion. Um, my role, as I mentioned, focused on the brand side for the first 2 or 3 years, I believe, at Otrium. And then as of recently, I've been looking after both B2C and the B2B side. So improving our customer experience as well.
Yeah, well, sounds like you had a lot of challenges at the beginning, and as Otrium grew, I believe you managed to overcome most of them, especially starting, let's say, when you mentioned the supply and onboarding a lot of brands, probably a lot of inventory coming in, and as it scales, there are more and more challenges that are coming. Um, yeah, so maybe being you said as a director of product and technology in Otrium, can you share also a bit more about how Otrium is adapting to the changing marketplace and e-commerce landscape, because there are changes all the time. You've seen it through the growth, especially with the ongoing digitalization and AI revolution that is happening now.
Yes, I think I'll start by the hot topic, which is AI, and probably most relevant for this webinar as well. I think how Otrium's adapting, and probably something that's not spoken of a lot at the
Mhm.
moment, is there's kind of two approaches, I think, to the AI
Yeah.
topic. One approach is to be part of the early adopters, so be part of the learning, implementing at the rapid pace that all AI solutions at the moment are
Mhm.
growing at. That's one approach that you can take. The other one, and that's the one I think you see a lot on social media, on LinkedIn, and all the buzz around the AI. The other approach that I think is not often talked about is also to just be patient, keep seeing what specific use cases you want to solve, which
Mhm.
products of AI become mature, and then be fast to act and implement it.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
think both of these two approaches take different level of investment, different resources. So it really depends, I think, one on your company's dynamics. So what are your constraints? How many resources, how much time, how much money do you have to really invest in AI? Because I don't think it will be successful in your company as a side hustle. You really have to commit. Um, or do you be fast to implement it as soon as you have a specific use case and there are mature products out there in the market? So that's a little bit, I think our Otrium has also
Mhm.
approached the AI topic over the time that I'm there. We kind of balance between these two approaches, and it all comes down to depending on the use case. So I think the key is not to fall in love with the technology, but still remember that you've got to solve actual customer problems. And where there's a good use case, then tailor your approach around those two, um,
Yeah.
depending
Yeah.
on what's the business and your customer the best.
Yeah. So you said that you balance between these two approaches. Like, did you also notice that one approach works better than the other? Like, should you look at the first the use case or see what's first out there?
Well, I think the approach and the use cases are two different things. So I think
Yeah.
you always have to have a clear use case. You've got to have a
Yeah.
clear use case and problem that you're solving before implementing the technology for the sake of technology.
Yeah.
And that's what I mentioned with be careful of just falling in love with technology and trying to put it everywhere throughout your journey or your product. Um, that's different to the two approaches. I think one is you have to have the use case for either approach.
Mm.
I think
Yeah.
I think that's relevant there, just to clarify. And then the two approaches, which one is more successful? No, I don't think either or is more successful. It just depends on which, again, your company constraints and which use case you are tackling. In some cases, if you really have the right skills in house, the right resources, then being an early adopter, learning with the product, and being committed to the rapid pace. I think that's maybe the misconception out there sometimes, is that people
Yeah.
think it's, like I mentioned, a side hustle that can just happen.
Yeah.
But AI is evolving at an extreme rapid pace, and I think
Yeah.
if you are going to be an early adopter and start playing around with it, then you really have to commit to keeping up
Yeah.
with the developments, because otherwise you're not going to get the full outcome that you want at the end, which again should stem around the problem
Yes.
or the use case that you're trying to solve.
Yes, yes, I completely agree. And you need commitment. And I think we also chatted yesterday that you need to look at AI tools as your new junior employee, right? Like you need to put attention to train it, to adapt so that you can start working together. And in times, of course, AI is, as you said, growing rapidly. It's evolving, but it can also learn from your data as well. So it's really important that you work together with the AI to get the most success out of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so you've mentioned that Otrium has grown a lot. What do you think are the biggest challenges you face while scaling Otrium operations, particularly during market expansion? And what strategies have you implemented to manage product data effectively as the marketplace continues to grow and you onboard new brands?
Perfect. I see we have a question in the chat as well. I think we
Ah,
have a
okay.
question later on that is around the similar topics. I don't know if we should answer it now or a little
We can
later.
answer it now. Actually, this fits. Thanks for noticing it. I think this fits perfectly with what we were discussing, and that is how do you decide which new technologies or tools are worth experimenting with Otrium?
Correct. So yes, happy to answer. Thanks, Peter. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly for the question. I think, and I know I'm repeating it, but the first part is the use case. So I'm
Mhm.
a very first principle thinker, so I'm going to start from that. But once you have a clear use case, then the next decision point, I think, often at Otrium and probably many companies, is the build versus buy. So that I'm just following the steps that we
Yeah.
practically take. So then we move towards build versus buy before looking at specific technologies, because I think
Mhm.
it differs. If you're going to build yourself in house, it's based on skills you have, based on what direction you want to take your tech stack. If it's
Mhm.
buy, you can maybe be open to more different technology. So first, I think you've got to answer the question: are you going to buy or build in the specific use case? And there, the logic
Mhm.
generally that we like to follow is build where you really want to differentiate yourself. Where are you going to be best in class? Because you can't be best in class in everything,
Yeah.
otherwise you will fall behind. And where is it just a standard practice that you want to deliver for your
Mhm.
customer?
Yeah.
We would then basically buy for where it's standard practice, and I advise to build on something that's a unique proposition to your company, your product,
Yeah.
or your solution. So that's the first step. And then I think it comes to your question of which technologies. And there it's a mix. It's not as most decisions, just binary. It depends on the skills then that you have. So if we're looking to build or buy, what skills do you have in-house to either implement the technology or to support and collaborate with the partner
Mhm.
that you have? So that definitely should drive the decision of which technologies. And then also, I think one of the learnings, and I'm going to pivot a
Mhm.
little on a question that I've had at Otrium, is also buying the right technology for the size and the scale that you envision that use case or area of your product to be.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll make that a bit more tangible. So sometimes we've implemented technologies that are, um, let me make a metaphor out of it. It's kind of the Ferrari, but all you actually needed was and I hope there's no car manufacturers on the call, but maybe you just needed a little VW Beetle, but you've actually bought and gone out and implemented a Ferrari
Yeah.
technology, and then you end up using not even a fraction of the functionality or the use case, and you end up overpaying. So I
Yeah.
think, coming back to the question, I think it first the use case, then the buy
Mhm.
versus build, then what skills or what is your tech stack and vision
Mhm.
that you're heading towards. And then I also incorporate the size and scale, because different solutions out there are, even
Mhm.
though a lot of them will be, say, we cater for all, they will specialize in one certain segment, whether it be smaller organizations, mid-market, or enterprise. And I think depending on how big your company is, or that use case or segment of users that you want to grow, that then drive the final decision of which technologies to look for.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
hope I hope that gives some practical insight to that question.
Yeah, I think that that's a great answer. I also have one additional question. So you mentioned, okay, first the use case, and then build versus buy, and then you look at the technology itself. Maybe it will be helpful for people in the audience to know, okay, once you decide to go for a technology that is out there, how do you test it, and how do you decide which one you want to use? Because also, for example, at Pixel, we get a lot of brands and retailers. They say, okay, can we do a POC first? And of course, we do understand that it's a new technology and everybody wants to see how it works, so we always give a small test or larger POCs. Can you share like how the process have been at Otrium with once you decide and then test these technologies?
Yeah, I can definitely share from my experience
Mhm.
and what we've done, and I think we
Yeah.
did similar with Pixel at the time. So
Yeah.
this is a perfect question on that one. Uh, so where to start? I think there's a broader thing to test, and this is my personal experience and
Mhm.
view on the topic. I'm sure there are many
Yeah.
others, but one is testing the actual technology, and I think the part that then is often missed, or again not spoken about enough, is outside of the technology. I always believe in the three kind of intersections. You have people, process, and technology,
Yeah.
and they all three are involved no matter what experience I've had. There's it might be different percentages of the three, but all three interact at some stage of a product, of a journey, of a use case. So if we come back to your question of how to test, I think those three are something that you should look at when looking at the
Yeah.
technology. You should look at the people behind the solution or the vendor or the partner. So when we used Pixel, for example, we looked at the people. Who are the people we're going to work
Yeah.
with? Are they collaborative? Are they fast, responsive? Are they passionate about what we want to solve and not just selling a product? So I think
Yeah.
people is one. So testing the people. So I come back to your question of testing. That's
Yeah.
one, to test and really validate when you selecting a technology.
Yeah.
And then the process. Are they? And process is twofold. One is, do they have certain processes that align with your company? So that comes back to
Mhm.
the sizes. For example, let me give a tangible one. If I'm a scale up or a very startup organization, I have this enterprise solution that are on board, but their process of support or new functionalities, I log a ticket
Yeah.
and I wait for the next annual roadmap. That's not going to quite work with my process at a startup of next week I plan to execute fast. So I think process, is it at the right, do they have the right processes that match your company's, let's say, momentum, speed, culture?
Yeah.
And do they have flexibility in their process? So are they willing to be a little adaptable and collaborate with you as you go down the journey? I think that's very important, especially coming back to AI technology. And then it's the actual technology, which I think is
Yeah.
the one I don't need to speak too much about, because everyone knows the technology. You do POCs. Does it solve the specific use case? Can you test the outliers? So can you test where it actually breaks? So I think if I speak about the technology itself, it's often you test for the success criteria, and as product and technology
Yeah.
people, we've been in all education, and as you get into the product world, it's around success criteria and acceptance
Yeah.
criteria. When I look at testing technology, I think that's the easy part. The part that you shouldn't overlook is what are the risk areas, because no technology is perfect. In
Yeah.
my experience, I'm yet to have a technology that you implement and it solves all the problems that you thought it would without any extra work or problem solving, right? So I think firstly look at and be aware, don't be too naive, be aware of what are the risk areas, what are the areas that, oh, I'm gonna have to make a trade-off here because they don't solve that well. And I
Yeah.
think that's something also you can't fully test depending on the POC, the relationship, and that comes back to how collaborative the partner is or the technology. But something I would advise to keep an eye on as well, so that you're very aware of the areas it does fall short, and you consciously choose
Mm.
based on that. Because every decision has a trade-off, whether product technology or in business, there's always a trade-off. If you think there's not a trade-off, then you're missing something.
Yeah. Well, that's a great answer, Bradley. I hope it helps to everybody listening, because we always also say it's not only about the technology but also the people behind the technology, because it's continuously evolving. There are continuous changes on top of it, and I think that goes back to your also build versus buy. Like when you decide to build it and not buy it, it's like what we've seen in the past. Okay, somebody we let's say decide to build it, but it's not only about building but continuously maintaining it, because it's changing all the time. And then to have not only a technology but a vendor that will continuously work with you as it changes, it's so important. So it's a great tip that you share, that to look at the process, the people, and the technology. It's not only about testing, okay, the technology works, that's it, but there's so much content around it as well.
Exactly. And again, I'm a first principle thinker. So whether you're building in-house or buying, that process remains the same. Always think of people, process, technology, and not necessarily the other way around. Again,
Yeah.
coming back to what I mentioned earlier, which is don't just fall in love with the technology. There should be a real use case, then think about the people behind it, the process, and then how the technology supports it. Um,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that should get you in the right direction at least.
Yeah, that's great. So, Peter, I hope we answered your question very extensively and that was helpful. So, let's go back now to the question that I posted regarding the challenges you face while scaling Otrium operations, and what strategies have you implemented to overcome these challenges. Especially, also, we can maybe touch upon the product data and managing it effectively.
Yeah, I think, well, there were many challenges. So we only have, what's it, 40 odd minutes left. So I'm not going to mention all of them. I'll narrow it down, I think, to the one specific for today's call. I think one, when scaling, was definitely around our product taxonomy. So setting up a
Mhm.
robust taxonomy, not a static one that had to keep evolving as the different markets have their different nuances, but also as fashion is continuously evolving. How consumers view fashion and look for items is continuously evolving. So that was definitely one of the challenges that we faced early on in Otrium. And how we overcame that really, and was by co-creating it and revising our taxonomy with Pixyle, actually. So Svetlana, you'll be well aware, we really had a close feedback loop and continuously looked at our taxonomy, what's happening in the market, how are the tools such as Pixyle, which we were working with and are working with, how are they viewing other taxonomies out there, how is the LLM models learning, what is a best suited taxonomy, both for the consumer but also for the technology, where we want to
Yeah.
automate. So how we overcame that is exactly that, co-creating it with a partner, and always looking at what is a core taxonomy and then being flexible around that. And I think that's, again, first principle thinking is, with any scaling, you've got to think of what is your core set of features or system and keep it as simple as
Yeah.
possible, and really do that well, and then keep a little flexibility in that for certain nuances where you are intentional about it. Be careful of just creating nuances for the sake of doing it. So that's one on the consumer side in terms of challenges. On the brand side, and talking about product data, as we scaled, it became more and more, I think, relevant, aware, and necessary to standardize our minimum data that we needed on the
Yeah.
platform, right? Certain markets have different regulations around it. and outside of regulations just perform differently. Certain consumers only care about a description. Certain consumers in different markets want to see a description, the material behind it, background story perhaps behind it drives certain consumers to purchase more. So standardizing our product data, especially from our brand partners, so we get the excess inventory, as I mentioned, became another challenge. And how we overcame that one was creating a lot of rules and standard processes with our brands, but more importantly is we created some self-serve functionality on our platform with our brand partners to make it as easy as possible. So saying, look, we understand there's more that we now require to put your products on our platform. However, we can also make it as
Yeah.
easy as possible to do that and automate what we can on our side. And that also comes back to why we started using Pixyle, is to automate a lot of those attributes for our brands, for our
Yeah.
consumers, and for Otrium to scale faster.
Yeah.
Um, so that's two challenges I'll
Yeah.
narrow down for
Yeah,
today's
great that
call.
you mentioned the taxonomy challenge, because it seems like in the industry everybody is using different types of taxonomies. Like every brand has their own filtering, their own wording of colors. We've seen so many varieties of navy to midnight blue to very poetic naming of colors. So I assume that was also one of the challenges, that you are getting data from different brands into different formats, and then you need to standardize it in your own taxonomy and the filtering that you use for the website. Because at the end, the taxonomy, the purpose that it serves is for filtering on, or maybe something else you also need it internally. Maybe you can share, like, why was the taxonomy so important to standardize and make it good and make it evolving. Because you mentioned it as a challenge, but I believe a lot of people in the audience also having similar challenges.
Yeah, so I think if I heard you correctly, there's kind of two questions there. One is the bigger role and why the taxonomy side. It touches so many parts of the
Yeah.
e-com experience, right? So one is indeed the consumer side. So the consumer side, I don't think I need to go too much into detail, because I think that that's the more tangible one for everyone. It's we've all been on websites and platforms searching for something, browsing through the taxonomy, the
Yeah.
categories to find what you want. So keeping that, and maybe I'll add a little lesson that we learned from that is don't look at all competitors and try and keep up with all the
Yeah.
changing ones. That's easy to do and easy to get distracted on that, but really focus on what is relevant for your business and your product that you're selling for your consumers, and then keep it as simple as possible. I think that's the key there. But outside of just the consumer experience, the taxonomy is also used to create collections and how marketing
Yeah.
advertise the product. So the more complicated that is, the more changes that are made there, the more it has a downstream effect on scaling your marketing operations. Outside of that, it also then touches how you get your product data into the system. So I think it has such a downstream effect, major effect on your product data and how you operationalize different areas around your e-com experience, that it's one to definitely get right. And as much as I said we overcame, I think it's overcoming the challenge is the right word, because it will remain a challenge, and it's just how best you can keep it simple and flexible
Yeah,
at the same time.
great. Can we also touch upon the product data and accuracy, and how did you manage to keep the accuracy at a good level as you scale and as you onboard new brands with different data points, of course, and scaling the operations with it?
Yes. Uh, Let me break that down into two questions. I think one is the product data accuracy, and one is the
Yeah,
efficiency that
yeah.
we achieved. So, starting at Otrium, I think the first part was around how do we create more efficient
Hmm.
operations
Hmm.
to scale. So to put it in perspective for those on the call as well, we were doing around, when I started, around 100 to 200 styles a week. That was our
Hmm.
capacity that we could put live based on the process that we had behind the scenes to get a product on the platform. And that's the digital process. So that covers visuals, categories, and then your attributes and product information. And there, as being a marketplace, the first goal is to increase supply. How do we get more? How do we accelerate more products every week to really grow the marketplace so that we have more great brands, products, prices for our consumers? Um, so that was the initial focus. And to do that, we partnered with Pixyle. As you well know, we actually built a digital tool that isolated this
Yeah.
use case. So this is coming back to what I mentioned earlier. It was a very clear use case that we had, which one had the short-term goal of increasing efficiency, and then a longer-term goal, so a kind of secondary metric, which would have been on the customer experience. Longer term, how does this create a better experience for our consumers? And on the efficiency side, we partnered with Pixyle in automating, first isolating the different stages of the process in a tool, and then building that for automation, which we partnered with Pixyle to automatically tag attributes and scale. To put in perspective, we went from 100 to 200 styles a week to 2,000, 4,000 styles a week um, within the matter of implementing the solution. So it really allowed us to almost 10x the amount of products we were able to put live per week. Then I will tie that into the accuracy, because there's the efficiency that you gain, and then how did we keep it accurate? And I think this is a good lesson in a lot of AI tools, especially the new use cases that are coming out there. You do need to keep in mind the effort and the consciousness of keeping the data accurate. There we started with a manual process, so we actually had a defect pipeline. Anything below a certain threshold would go towards a defect pipeline, which would still have a manual intervention. And the key there is, with the manual intervention, and as you all know, Svetlana, the key part to making the scale longer term is that we built in the feedback loop. So we kept feeding that information back to yourselves, Pixel, and the tool, which was a great collaboration, and we saw the accuracy start increasing. We really went for speed and efficiency first while improving the accuracy, and that was a conscious decision to get more on our website and then improve the quality behind it. And now I think we're at the stage where both is at a very good level. So speed is really high, and our accuracy, our confidence levels are really well tailored to what we need in terms of accuracy for our consumers.
And after working together and doing the feedback loop, as you mentioned, for the past 4 years, last year we removed the manual intervention, right? So now everything is being done automatically. So basically you went from doing a lot of things manually to completely automating the process after a few years of feeding the data. And now you have not a junior but more advanced AI worker doing the work for you.
Exactly. And I think that's a good lesson in general for if I go back to the two approaches on AI. So if we make it very specific for this call on Pixel, we took the early adopter kind of mindset, right? So again, as you mentioned, 4 years ago we started on this journey, and again, as you just mentioned, it took almost 2 years to feedback and get it to a level where we were fully automated. And I think sometimes that's forgotten or not spoken about enough, maybe because people will then shy away from it. But we did get the value from the start. But I think, as you mentioned, and especially with AI, it's not a once-off implementation. So really get your use case right. Really understand that it's going to take investment and time to iterate, to grow rapidly with the technology. And that's exactly what you did, as you mentioned. So now we have it fully automated, and that was amazing work by our team, and the Pixel team that worked tirelessly on this together to solve it. So yes.
Yeah, that's great. So basically, the immediate value that you saw, and of course, the first gain was the efficiency and scaling operations. But you also mentioned, and of course, the ultimate goal is to improve the customer experience. How has the tagging improved, let's say, the product discovery, search, filtering for Otrium?
Yeah, perfect. So yes, first thought was the efficiency which we gained, and that happened relatively quick. And then it was around, how do we now start embedding what we've done on the back end systems onto the customer experience. And there we started with, well, a better taxonomy, better for our consumers, which, as I mentioned before, we co-created with Pixel. And then the idea was, as we have a more static and automated taxonomy, we can then start adding specific filters and playing around with which filters. And when I say filters, I mean specifically on attributes. So think of sleeve length, occasion, pattern, style, those kind of filters. And we started playing around with those on our website to help our consumers find what they're looking for a little quicker, especially as we grew the supply side. So as I mentioned, we went from 100 brand partners to 400 plus. That's really quite a big scale. So put yourself in the consumer side. If you were often using the app, all of a sudden your 5 stores that you went to grew 10x. So it became very difficult to find what you liked. Using the Pixel tags and filtering those then on our website, we actually saw on our filters that we implemented almost a 2% to 3% conversion rate, compared to the normal one of 1.5 to 2, if you look at our normal filters and before we had the filters, if they just use the static taxonomy. So that's about a 1.5% better conversion on using the attributes. And that was the early stage, when we didn't have the right filters, the right attributes perfectly behind it. So I think, and we're still not there, just by the way. So I don't think it's ever perfect, because again, filters change and you need to be adaptable with how consumers want to view products and search for it. But we definitely see an improved engagement and conversion, when consumers get more specific
Yeah.
filters, that they're looking for on
Yeah,
their products.
well, that's great. Those sounds like a good numbers. But maybe we can mention like some examples, like what are the basic or the normal filters against the more advanced. You mentioned at the beginning you had like a color. Color is one of the basic filters, and let's say, for example, the style or the occasion is a bit more advanced filter.
Exactly. So the normal ones, I would say, I mean, the static ones you
Yeah,
get there is color, indeed. Then, I mean, size is a filter, but I think it's bigger than just
yeah,
a filter. Sizing in itself is a big topic, which I don't think we have time for on this call. But then you've got your normal price filter, maybe your brand, or different segment filters that you've got. But I think the big ones are price, color,
yeah,
and let's include sizing in there. Those are kind of the generic ones. And then your attribute specific, or what we used and in collaboration with Pixel, is then occasion, style, looking at those more specific, material, really deep diving into some of those attributes and filters, and adding
yeah,
that, we saw the increase in
yeah.
conversion. So when customers use that, just to make it very clear, when they were using those filters, it was a 2 to 3% conversion compared to a 1.5 on
Yeah.
the other
And
ones
as you
on average.
mentioned before, like you need to look at your customers, right? Like these are the filters that work for you, but there are so many others in the taxonomy. Everybody needs to do test and see, okay, what is it that your customers want to look for? In your case was the style and occasion. So your consumers wanted to buy for a specific occasion or specific style. I assume this is a test that you did, but for many others, like depending on the target audience or the shoppers, also exploring what filtering and attributes work for you is very important. Yeah,
Exactly. Yes. So for our case, those were the ones, and I think you hit the nail on the head. And as I mentioned, even at the moment, those are
yeah,
changing. So those might have been it a year or two ago, but might not be the accurate filters for today's consumer. And that'll be one specific to your product domain and consumers, and then also two, ever evolving. I think that's the key two
yeah,
takeaways
yeah.
there.
Great. Thanks, Bradley. So you were part of Otrium and the marketplace operations and product strategy during a period of rapid growth, as you shared at the beginning. And from your experience, what key factors do you believe drive long-term success for scaling e-commerce marketplaces?
I'm gonna go with three that come top of mind. I think the first one for long-term success is really focus on both supply and demand, in isolation, but also their connection to each other. If we talk a marketplace, I think really understanding in your business what is the impact of supply and demand, and vice versa, because in my experience they really go hand in hand. And often it's a bubble of pressure on ones. As I mentioned, some people believe supply driven first and then it becomes demand, and I do think on first principle that's true. But if you only react to the demand side when it becomes a problem, then the problem's almost already shifted to the other
Yeah,
side by the time you solve it. So one thing I think is key is really setting up your
mhm,
organization and having top of mind, are supply and demand really collaborating closely, and do you as a business understand the effect? If you have 20% down in supply next week, what impact does it have on demand, and vice versa? Because it's really crucial on the marketplace.
mhm,
So I think that's one thing that comes top of mind. The other for long-term success is, and I think it's the one that's often out there, is keep learning and testing. One of the things I
mhm,
enjoy and have enjoyed at Otrium, and in e-commerce, is you really get to see the result of your test. It's really easy, when you make a change, to
yeah,
understand the impact it has. And maybe, as I say, easy, some people are already on the call thinking, okay, but maybe it's not that easy. If you want to be specific, when I say easy, I mean on a business
yeah,
aspect. So looking at your average price per item, looking at your average order value, so really looking at your economics. The minute you make a change, you can generally see that impact on your business metrics pretty easily. And I think one, exciting, but also very crucial to keep learning, keep testing, and keep seeing how changes make an impact. And then the final one, which I think a lot of tech and marketplaces learned maybe a little bit the hard way, is
Yeah.
operational efficiency. So yes, there's growth at all costs, but it doesn't serve you, your customers, or the business if you're not doing it in an efficient way. So find the economies of scale and build a model
Yeah.
around that. I think those are the three that
Yeah,
come
those
top
are
of
three
mind.
great tips. And while I was posing the question, we actually got a question from the audience more on the other topic we discussed, that is more detail around filters of style. So maybe we can touch that upon before we continue with the rest. This is from Cedric. His question is, by offering more sophisticated filters like occasion and style, do you see increased engagement rates for the filters?
So I'm just trying to dissect the question. Is it meaning, so by offering more sophisticated filters like occasion, do you see increased engagement rates for the filters? So if the question is around those specific filters, or if adding those create more engagement on other filters, I'll try and answer both because I'm not sure which angle it is. Do we see increased engagement on those specific filters? Yes. So I think the short answer there is yes. One, we saw more engagement and we saw an increase in conversion rate. However, I don't want to make it that broad because on certain filters we see that and on certain not. And that comes back to my earlier point of learning and understanding your consumer. So stick close to just adding more does not necessarily mean more engagement. You've got to get them right. And as I mentioned, we that's ever evolving and we sometimes get it right, sometimes don't, but you've got to continuously learn and play around with that. So I think I would answer that in saying when you get it right, and chances are good if you play around with it, then yes, we see increased engagement and better conversion from those filters. Then I'll look at it the other angle that I mentioned, which I'm not sure if that's the question behind it, but if we add those, do we see increased engagement on other filters and let's say navigation? There, not specifically. We haven't seen a correlation. It might be there, it might not. So I don't want to say no, but I also can't say yes. That one we haven't seen an uptick big enough in adding certain filters creates more engagement overall on filters and categories. So I think for now, the focus is more on getting the right filters. Yes, we see an increase in
Yeah.
engagement.
Okay, great. So, Bradley, what you're saying is that, let's say your consumers are going to the navigation anyway, right? Like they were using the filtering before, and as you're adding new filters, the engagement there hasn't changed or you haven't measured. But at least when they go into the filters, if you have the right filters, this is where you see higher conversion. Yes.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct,
Okay.
correct,
Okay,
correct.
thanks. Maybe we can also answer. I see Martina's question before I go on with mine. And this is a great question as well. As someone with experience leading tech and product teams, what's one piece of advice you'd give to businesses looking to get the most out of their digital transformation?
One piece of advice, I'll try and keep it to one. I think I've mentioned it a few times in this call. It sounds simple, but I think so many companies do get it wrong, and I'm in my experience have also gotten it wrong before. But it's really, especially if I again look at product and
Mhm.
technology, it's to follow the process of business goals, people, process, technology enables it. I think, again, it sounds simple, but that would be my one piece of advice. If you're looking to get the most, think through all those steps. If you're starting the other way around or in the middle, then you're likely to have more challenges and failures that you will learn from because we all have failures. But that would be my one advice. Go business goals. What is the goal? What is the use case? What are we is the direction we want to solve? What are the people behind it, whether it's outside, internal, but what is the people set up? What processes do we have in place? Is it to go fast? Is it to deliver quality? And I think that's something we'll talk about later in the call,
Yeah.
maybe. And then what is the technology that enables it? Do not fall in love with the technology and try and fit it into your business goals or your people, because then it creates quite a lot of friction, and not a lot of stakeholder confidence on your transformation. So that would be my one. Keep it simple, follow that process, first
Yeah.
principle
Yeah, I think that's a
process.
great piece of advice. And you mentioned it earlier, so I think everybody can have it as a key takeaway from this call. And I think it's really interesting that you mentioned that, because although we never talked about this, also on our side, we have, let's say, for the sales team, when they talk with a potential client to look at the people, process, and technology. Because what we notice is, in order for our technology to have success, it needs to be implemented well and it needs to be used. So we also always look at, okay, when we work with client, we have to have these three principle aligned. So it's great to see you mentioning this multiple times. Martina, I hope the answer helped you. I see Cedric saying thank you for answering from both perspectives. So thanks, Bradley, for that.
Yeah.
Um,
Brilliant.
yeah,
And maybe Svetlana,
yeah,
just to add on that because it just came to mind as well. Because again, I mentioned that it sounds simple, and I was trying to think as I mentioned that where are the
yeah,
challenges in it? Why is it not
yeah,
that simple? And I think it's often because those 3 or 4 different
hmm,
steps involve generally different
yeah,
people in the organization, maybe
yeah,
different functions, um, and and the key is to try and bring it
yeah,
together, try and think through all of those before just going. So I think that's where the challenge lies in why it's not as simple as it
yeah,
sounds, depending on your size of your organization. But if you get that right, it makes a big difference to the digital transformation. Just coming back to the question, or whatever area you're looking to kind
yeah,
of improve and really gain traction, is try and get that holistic thinking in place, whether that's from different stakeholders, someone
yeah,
putting it together in a one pager, but really how do they all in isolation fit the use case and together as an interconnected system. They need to work
yeah, yeah.
together.
That's a great.
um, Otherwise it's a very
Yes,
bumpy road, I
yes.
find.
I think you felt it yourself, and for us, I think the success we had with Otrium is mostly because you had that role, Bradley. Like you were there, in between the teams, putting people together, thinking of the processes. So you felt it firsthand, and implementing that and aligning the people and the processes together with the technologies when you see success. Yes.
100%.
So yeah, maybe we can now go a bit more broad and get your, let's say, professional and expertise overview of what do you think the most important digital trends in digital e-commerce right now are, and how should companies be preparing to capitalize on them?
Most relevant for today, I mean there's a lot of trends that you can read out
Yes.
there, and I'm not sure, trends is also very subjective, I find, because trend is broad, but all different companies are
Yeah.
different journeys, so it's hard to say what trends they are. But for me, the biggest one I will use for this call is, I think, the product
Yeah.
discoverability. So especially in outlet fashion space that we're in, it's crucial, and customers are looking for both style and value in today's world. And with the technology out there, I think product discoverability is in for massive
Yeah.
disruption. So I think the way we find products, this is not just in fashion, but I use products kind of
Yeah.
elusively, is across whatever platform is selling a specific item, let's say item maybe. The way consumers find those items, I think, is drastically changing. So from the old school way, we've actually spoken to some of it today in the taxonomy, and that I think it's moving a lot more to visual search, voice search, having a AI style assistant, for example. I think eventually we will just be talking to someone that gives us different items that we want, put them together maybe across
Yeah.
platforms. So I think the trend on how we find products is the biggest one that comes to mind for me, and that there's many different technologies evolving at
Yeah.
rapid pace around these things. Um, for example, a typical one maybe that will be very relevant to a lot of people on the call is SEO. So SEO and generating that organic search is something we've mostly all set ourselves
Yeah.
up for in terms of technology platforms, marketplaces, e-commerce. Um, and I think we need to start, if not already yesterday, as is always the case, start thinking about how do we set that up for the new way of searching, because AI models and LLMs that are searching platforms, so use ChatGPT, for example, that takes a different technical infrastructure and setup to optimize for that. And I do think that's coming quicker
Yeah,
than we
yeah,
think.
I agree. So we talked, let's say, in general about the technologies, but what do you think, more specifically, AI can do? Let's say you mentioned the customer experience and how people are shopping. How can AI play, and how will AI play a big role into changing and distracting this market?
Yeah, well, I think it's in two major areas. One is the automating
Hmm.
and making simple, I don't want to use the word simple because I don't think anything's really simple, but automating a lot
Mhm.
of tasks, automating a lot of things. I think in automation, and creating a lot more efficiency for companies is definitely going to play a role. And then I think it's going to play a role in the other area, which is innovating and really understanding again, in which use cases do you want to
Mhm.
differentiate yourself. And that's maybe where there's so many AI tools out there that can really disrupt the way you are doing things in certain parts of your journey. So I think one is in automation and efficiency. I mean, there's talks on the engineering side about we've got all these low code platforms and AI tools out there that can now build prototypes and things a lot faster. So gaining efficiency on that side. And then the innovation side, which I've alluded to some of them, but the visual search, voice search,
Mhm.
how AI is tagging and setting your platform up to use those functionalities, I think will be a key way to capitalize on
Yeah,
in the
and if
future.
I may also add my take here, you mentioned the customer experience, and we see a lot of chats with AI. So this is for general, but I believe also there will be times when people will be shopping directly and chatting with the let's say e-commerce platforms instead of browsing and in more details. So yeah, I completely agree. There will be disruptions coming the way, and it's not going to be super super fast, but they are coming, and AI will have a crucial role there. I also see there's another question coming, so maybe we can answer that one as the last one, and then we can wrap up the session. This is, what advice would you give to other companies who want to use AI to improve their product data management? So this is, I believe, more on the operational side.
Yes. What advice would you give other companies? Um, Three big themes come to mind. One is, and I've repeated it quite a lot, so apologies for that, but I will say it again, is have a clear use case. So have clear use cases, and maybe I can elaborate a bit on that as well, just for specific to this question. My advice would be around that is also transparent
Yeah.
communication. So I think a lot of what can happen and creep up in organizations, and I think in the AI space in general, is being naive that it's this buzz, which often happens with buzz things, and that it will just naturally happen. I think if you're waiting for it to naturally happen, you're going to be too late. So my one is be clear on use cases, be intentional, and then be transparent in communicating that to your teams, to the organization, not just to one person at
Mhm.
coffee. Hey, I think we should be using AI more. That I don't think that's going to get the job done. I think you need to, and you actually see it now. A lot of the LinkedIn posts you would have seen. I'm sure everyone with Spotify CEO communicating it very clearly, of how we're going to use AI. Duolingo as well,
Mhm.
I think, is one of the companies that have recently shared examples. But that is important. Really communicate transparently to the organization or your team or your co-partner on this journey, whatever size you're at, on doing that. And then I think the other one that comes with that is incentivize. So how are you setting up? That's the people side and process that I mentioned before, right? How are you incentivizing those people? Do you have performance metrics on it? Do you have feedback loops on how we're using it daily? So that's something. It can also be as simple as, are you having an innovation award every month to the person who implemented the best AI solution in a
Mhm.
specific use case? Don't make it just an AI solution, because that's a vanity metric, if you've heard of those. And then my final one would be iterate and invest. It I think we've spoken today on the call, and it might seem, we just implemented Pixel, and it was a click of a button. It was really fast, and we got efficiencies really quickly. And then we built
Yeah.
on that, right? And that's where the long-term value, and I think the partnership that's evolved between the two companies has really delivered value. So be willing to iterate and invest. It really, because of the rapid pace of the technology, you have to keep iterating and be close to that technology
Yeah.
and evolve.
Well, I think that is a great tip. And, I really like, Bradley, that of course the technology is important. And as you say, I think you were one of the fastest integrators. You integrated Pixel in only 2 days. You have the record on our site with clients that has integrated the fast.
Not just me though. That's definitely a shout out
Yes.
to the Otrium team, and I think the team that was working on it. But yes,
Yeah.
that's good to know.
Yeah, you have the record there. Yeah, of course the team and the developers were great. In just 2 days we were up and running, but then we worked very closely together, right? Like, as you said, like, to keep on tracking, measuring, seeing the value, adapting. And then the technology, of course, is important, but more the process and the people and the thinking about it around it is so important. And although we do sell technology and I love the technology, all other parts are so important. So I think it's great that you're really stressing those out continuously. Okay, I think there's just thank you. I think we can wrap up. We have only 5 minutes left, so no time for an extensive question. I would just want to say thank you so much, Bradley, for joining us and sharing your perspective today. It was super valuable, and I think it's really great to hear how Otrium is using the technology and product thinking together to drive meaningful change, not just in operations but across the entire organization, and that you measure, you continuously evolve and improve. I think that's really great to hear, and I think that's probably why Otrium has had such a success in time. At Pixel, we've seen how AI can unlock new levels of efficiency by automating these time-consuming tasks like product data enrichment, of what we talked today. And your experience in Otrium really highlights what's possible when companies embrace innovation and collaboration together. So I would want to now talk to the audience and mention if any of you are now currently exploring how AI can help your business scale smarter and faster. I'd love to chat, so you can book a 30-minute consultation call with me personally through my Calendly link, and you will find it in the chat in the comments. And to everyone who tuned in, thank you so much for spending time with us and listening today. We hope this session gave you valuable takeaways from Bradley that you can bring back to your teams. So keep an eye for our next session. We'll be announcing the new topic very soon. So thanks again, Bradley, and thanks everyone for joining. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye bye.